National security issues are dominating President Trump's days, including Iran's nuclear program, military operations in Syria, Russian aggressiveness, the rise of China, and a high-stakes upcoming summit with North Korea. And next week, he'll host his third foreign leader in 3 weeks. My cover story this week in The Atlantic explores the challenges of the American presidency. Managing national security is the most important one and has gotten the most complex over the years. We spoke to 3 men who spent much of their careers in national security and government to help us understand the challenges any president faces. How dangerous is the global order for the president right now?
I think he faces about the most challenging situation we've faced as a country internationally since the end of the Cold War.
Stephen Hadley worked in the government under President Ford, later serving George Herbert Walker Bush in the Pentagon, and was his son George W. Bush's advisor on national security for close to a decade.
It's kind of like the old plate spinner in the circus, you know, a dozen plates on a narrow spindle held up only because the spindles keep spinning. The spin maker has to go from plate to plate to plate, spin it, spin it, spin it, keep them from falling.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower,
will to the best of my ability.
Being president has never been easy. But in the age of terrorism, the number of threats have multiplied, and Americans are vulnerable at home as they've never been.
In national security, 10,000 successes equals 1 failure.
Jay Johnson was chief counsel to the Secretary of Defense and served as Secretary of Homeland Security.
We're responsible for catching it all. And many days in Homeland Security, whether you're talking about a terrorist threat, the threat of a lethal virus, a cyber attack, spikes in illegal migration, it's like trying to catch raindrops.
To respond to security issues, a well-functioning White House requires a stable and methodical system.
The job is so large that there has to be a certain structure to it to ensure that the president's day is spent effectively and efficiently and that he's making the right decisions.
Without a system, presidents veer from crisis to crisis.
If all you do is respond to crises, all you will get is more crises, because you won't be able to take the time to put in place the strategies and policies that will shape the future and head off some of these crises.
Not every challenge in the modern presidency is born overseas. Changes in domestic politics have also increased the friction in the job.
Our Congress is increasingly polarized. There is now virtue in politics over governing. And a president is given literally no grace period in office.
I will faithfully
From day one, there are people in the opposition who want to see the president fail.
And the very size of the White House has become an impediment, too.
Thank you, Mrs. Carter.
Joseph Califano was a top aide to Presidents Johnson and Carter.
When you get the White House staff up to 2,000, which is where they are now, you have 450 people in the National Security Council. The State Department's overwhelmed. You have close to a couple hundred people in the domestic policy staff. You have 400 people in communications. So many issues get to the president's throat because you've got all these people working on these issues that shouldn't really get there, that are better off left down in the bureaucracy to resolve so the president can focus on the big strategy.
Perhaps the biggest challenge to the presidency is that we have become a presidency-obsessed nation. The framers designed a small, limited office. Now, in many ways, we expect one person to represent a country of 327 million people.
So what should change?
Well, where do you begin? I think our expectations to the office should change. We should think more about what a president actually does in office when we think about picking them. And you talk to anybody on both sides, and they say Congress needs to step back up and be a co-equal branch of government, not really a branch that operates after the president.
Do you think you would have written the same piece if Trump were not president?
It started in the Obama years. And this is something, you know, I talked to people for over a year in both parties. And it's, you know, supporters of the President Trump think, you know, he's blowing through all the inefficiencies of the White House. Of course, his critics say it's because he's doing so that it's a problem.
It's what they call in the business a good read.
Well, thank you.
Spins into other things. Nicely done.